Let's spritz a little Britney in the room. This shit is vintage now. Who knew my hoarding would pay off? Oh, that smells so good. That smells so good. Oh my god. Welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. So in this video, I just wanted to give my thoughts on the new Britney Spears documentary by the New York Times called Framing Britney Spears. I'm sort of doing this video spontaneously, so it might get a little rambly. This is just kind of my opinion, what I thought of the movie, what I think of the movement, and what I'm hoping to see moving forward. So Framing Britney Spears is a documentary on Hulu that has been picking up a lot of steam this week with the mainstream public. I was so deep in my pop music and pop culture bubble that I didn't even realize that the general public wasn't super aware about all this. I'm kind of in shock at how many people are just coming out in support of Britney. A lot of celebrities are tweeting and Instagramming and just showing their support online to Britney Spears and sort of reflecting on that era of paparazzi culture and celebrity culture and how sort of twisted it was. I'm a little bit like, where have y'all been? Like, what? Y'all are just finding out about this? Like, this documentary sort of depicts the rise of Britney's career, the fall, the specifics about this conservatorship that she is in with her dad, and how the Free Britney movement sort of factors into all of that. So in case you haven't seen the documentary, I'll catch you up real quick. Britney Spears was a huge pop star in the early 2000s, rose to fame in 1998, and was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, star of that time. Her story is really messed up in that she rose to fame as a teen and was hypersexualized by the public, the interviewers. She was held to this impossible standard of being like this super sexy, pop girl and being a very innocent, virginal person. And sort of she could never win in either direction. She was harassed at length by the paparazzi in ways that luckily we don't see anymore due to a few factors. She had these goals of becoming like a wife and a mother in the long term, and those things ended up being weaponized against her by the public, by her family. She had this infamous meltdown in 2007, When you look at the facts of the matter, it was kind of a situation of like, who wouldn't snap under this level of scrutiny after everything she's been through? Like, I don't blame anybody for sort of snapping in any way, and she didn't hurt anybody. The whole shaving her head moment was very taken out of context, and also like it makes a lot of sense now looking at it. It's like she wants this image that the public and everyone is obsessed with her being to like go away. The whole shaving of the head moment, it was pretty symbolic, and it wasn't like that big a deal. Like, I feel like nowadays people shave their heads and dye their hair weird colors, and it's not this huge deal. So these sort of instances were used against her to determine that she was mentally unstable and mentally incapable of taking care of herself. It led to this court order of her being put under a conservatorship with her father as conservator. A conservatorship it's normally used for super elderly people, very disabled people that need someone to handle their basic needs and look after them. So it sort of puts laws in place where your rights as an adult are taken away, your basic rights, because you're incapable of taking care of yourself. There's different types of conservatorships, but Britney was under two types, which is a conservatorship of her person and a conservatorship of her estate, her finances, and her dad was appointed as conservator for both. He had legal right to anything she did, any whereabouts, anything she said in the public eye, like literally everything about her and her finances. So already, even for disabled people, laws around conservatorships seem to be very, like, a little too liberal, and there seem to be very little protections for the conservatee in these situations. Basically, for a conservatorship to be approved, you have to be proven mentally incapable of performing basic needs. And she was determined that. And all of the details of like the moment the conservatorship happened are super, super shady. The documentary on Hulu actually doesn't go very deep into sort of the play-by-play and how there seemed to be some like shady behavior by the judge specifically that it's very shady. But a conservatorship is one of those things that once it's granted, it is super difficult to undo. That by itself is such a bad part about this law for any person that goes into this. And the big kicker with Britney is that this conservatorship happened in like 2008 after this public meltdown, and she worked most of the years following that. She worked a very difficult job of being a pop star this whole time. She recorded albums, she went on world tours, she had a Vegas residency, she guest starred on TV shows, she did interviews. To do all of these things, you have to be very mentally capable of remembering choreography or, making coherent sentences. A lot of the times these conservatorships are in extreme cases where those things are not easy. those things are not happening. A Vegas residency, like all of these things take a lot of mental capability to execute. So that's the part that makes no sense about the conservatorship and why her fans are so concerned with the Free Britney movement, because she has proven herself to be mentally capable, and she's expressed desire to end the conservatorship multiple times throughout all these years. Just no one takes her seriously because legally she is deemed mentally incapable of anything, essentially. So that's sort of the conservatorship part. And then the Free Britney movement sort of came about from this podcast called Britney's Gram, where these two podcast hosts like dissected her Instagram posts in order to see if there was any secret messages in them, like that she was trying to get across to her fans. This podcast at some point in early 2019 got an anonymous tip about how Britney had been checked into rehab against her will and that she wants out and all these things, and that was enough proof to sort of birth this Free Britney movement. The documentary played this voicemail, and they disclosed that they have not verified the source, so I don't know how super real that voicemail is, but Britney has sort of endorsed the fan support at this point. It's sort of recently-ish. Britney released a statement somewhere where she said she welcomed the informed support of her fans. And that was sort of like confirmation to this Free Britney movement that there is some validity to what they're trying to get. So this Free Britney movement started taking off sort of in 2019 and 2020. Now I'm realizing it wasn't mainstream that I was seeing this. It was on the fringes in the gay media community. It wasn't quite everywhere, but it was showing up. Evie Oddly on the finale of RuPaul's Drag Race had a little reveal with her dress that said Free Britney on it. But I had just been seeing stuff about it here and there in the Popheads community and whatnot. Sometime in the fall of 2020, I was suggested this video on YouTube that was a deep dive documentary, a fan-made documentary on Britney Spears' situation and sort of pushing this agenda of Free Britney. And this documentary was sort of my first real thorough understanding of what was going on. Before I watched this YouTube documentary, I was a lot more confused about the whole conservatorship term, which I think that's the boat a lot of people were in before this Hulu one, but because of my YouTube algorithm, I got suggested this YouTube one, and it was honestly quite good. I recommend it. The channel, I think, is actually called Deep Dive. I will link it below. They did a multiple-part documentary series on the Britney Spears situation, first chronicling the rise, the meltdown, the conservatorship legal proceedings. It goes into a lot of detail. I haven't watched beyond part 4 of this docuseries. There is more that I haven't seen. So that's why when I heard about this Hulu one, I was like, oh, this is cool that this is getting out there. New York Times is covering it. But to me, I wasn't necessarily rushing to go watch it because I felt like I had such a thorough education from these YouTube documentaries. But the YouTube ones were definitely more lo-fi. You can tell they're fan-made. There is a lot of love in them, and I appreciate that style, but it is much more of like the YouTube aesthetic of documentaries that are made by just more like regular people. Once I sat down to watch the Hulu one, I was excited, like, okay, maybe because it is made by the New York Times and professionally made, it'll condense every detail in like a nice succinct way in one movie. Because that was my main complaint sort of about the YouTube series, was that it was so many parts. I haven't even finished it. Each one was almost like its own documentary movie. I was like, okay, the Hulu one is going to condense everything. It's going to show everything perfectly. And to my surprise, the Hulu one was well produced. It did summarize the whole story well, but obviously because I didn't have the time, it did not do a play-by-play about all of these significant moments that led up to everything. So the YouTube doc really went into exactly the timeline of this meltdown night, or it went exactly into the timeline of the conservatorship official like signing of it and all of like the attorney meetings and things like that. The YouTube one went in depth on that day where Britney got like 5150'd, which is where mental health professionals have to like take you by force from your home. There was one discrepancy between the two documentaries that surprised me, and now I don't know what to think, and this is why you should always watch multiple sources. The YouTube doc painted Sam Lufty, which was that like, he was like a best friend / manager to Britney in that post-2007 era. The YouTube doc painted Sam as more like a good guy that was trying to help Britney, and the Hulu doc painted him as much more shady and sleazy. Honestly, I don't know what to think on him. He seems kind of sleazy just by like his look and his like constant blackberrying. Also in this Hulu doc, I felt kind of conflicted about them interviewing so many of these like shady bad characters. I guess it gives good impact, but like they interviewed like a paparazzi guy that was there. He was the one that his truck got hit by the umbrella that Britney had. Like that shady lawyer. And I'm just like, I don't want to hear from these people. These people are garbage. I guess it's good. I'm seeing a lot of outrage, but it just sucks to see these people that benefited from Britney's rights being stripped away just sitting pretty, sort of. I don't wish cyberbullying on anyone, but if karma exists, then these people are due for some cyberbullying for sure after what Britney has gone through in the public eye. There was like that guy from Us Weekly that curated all the photos. And something that this documentary got me thinking about is that it sucks that Britney is not the only one that this has happened to. Britney's story is one of the most extreme for sure, but some version of this happens to like most if not all women in Hollywood and in the public eye, because the tabloids and the media just like, and Jamila Jamil talked a lot about this like on her social media, how this life cycle of like a woman's career, the tabloids and publications really build her up, then overexpose her, make people annoyed with them in whatever way possible, sort of like attack their character in any way they can, tear them down, and then once they've gone to rock bottom, then they love that comeback story, and they'll build them up again. This is essentially the whole premise of the comeback, which I know I made a whole video about, and I do have season 1, episode 1, recap and analysis coming out soon. But this was kind of the whole point that the comeback was trying to make. The protagonist of the comeback, Valerie Cherish, was very confused about why she needed a comeback when she didn't go anywhere, she didn't retire, she didn't purposely try to slow down her career in any way. I also found it interesting in the Hulu doc that it mentioned the Monica Lewinsky scandal and how that sort of paralleled or played a part alongside Britney being hypersexualized in the public eye. See, that's the thing, like, there's so many women that this story has happened to in some way. Like, it got me thinking about, like, why do we as a society only care about things when, like, a documentary comes out about it? I do this too, so I'm not like saying I'm like, oh, I'm above it, I care about everything all at once. It's just like so weird to me that like, oh, now we care because the New York Times said something. Are we gonna all care about Monica Lewinsky all of a sudden if her doc comes out, or Lindsay Lohan, or Amanda Bynes, another person whose mental illness was like weaponized and used and abused by the by the media, by the tabloids? This is sort of what draws me to media in the first place. This is what draws me to pop culture, to documentaries, because I love seeing how these pieces of media have such power over our consciousness and have so much influence. Usually I am in admiration of all that, but like right now, after seeing all of this, I'm a little bit like freaked out by its power in a way. Just because like, I don't know. This is also like the argument of like, oh, you can't like care about everything. Like, yes, Britney isn't free, but there's people starving and there's people homeless and there's people in a pandemic and so many things, so many people suffering that it's there's some metaphor for this. Has to do with spoons I've seen, but I don't quite remember it. So I obviously really hope that this conservatorship ends for Britney, that some good results from this steam and momentum that the public is giving it. I really hope this can be a lesson in a bit of disability rights awareness, and ideally this would lead to changes in the conservatorship model, not just for Britney, but for anyone else that might be taken advantage of in this way. There's a greater picture here, and I really, really hope it leads to some good for Britney, but it's important to remember that if you care about the Britney Spears situation, to keep in mind to not participate in this tabloid culture of tearing women down, tearing celebrities down, just to build them back up later, and jumping on bandwagons of hating and death threats and cyberbullying. So many publications are guilty. So many of them are like apologizing now, or like reporting on the Free Britney movement, and everyone on social media is rightfully dragging them. You played a part in this, stop pretending you didn't. But yeah, there's this interview in the documentary where this congresswoman or this government official lady or this important lady is like, if I could shoot her, I would if she was in front of me, or something like that, like a verbal death threat that Diane Sawyer or whoever played for Britney in the room. You see Britney sort of break down after that a little bit. I mean, obviously, it's weird. I think social media plays a big part of like how much the world has changed around all of this. Social media gave celebrities an opportunity to show their real lives on their own terms to their fans, and I think that was super important for just killing paparazzi sort of obsessions. And also there were laws put in place due to the mistreatment of Britney and other stars around that time. It's crazy. It was a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, is when I sort of realized how invasive the paparazzi were to Britney. My boyfriend Cameron, who's not well versed in pop culture and gives me a lot of opportunities to revisit old pop culture moments and explain them to him before I had this YouTube channel to do that in. We sort of went down a rabbit hole of like Britney and how she was treated by the paparazzi, just sort of compilations of that, and like it was so terrifying. Like that was my first wake up call to like, oh, she was treated like terribly by the paparazzi. Like she would go in the bathroom at a gas station and they would be trying to get in there, like a bathroom. It's just like, it's ridiculous, and I'm glad there are laws in place now that at least protect celebrities from this kind of abuse and invasiveness. And on top of it, social media gives celebrities an opportunity to show themselves without makeup, or show themselves, going shopping, or whatever it is that paparazzis were showing before. Now celebrities get to do it directly. Because that's the thing, back then we didn't have social media and we didn't have these things, so all we had to go off of a celebrity's personal life is these tabloid photos that were horribly invasive and just out of the control of the person that was in them. Another big result of all of this has been scrutiny again on Justin Timberlake, anti-vaxxer activist Justin Timberlake. Who knows if his children are vaccinated, whatever, but Justin Timberlake has ruined 2 women's careers, and has suffered not at all for his career. So I don't like him. I don't even like his music as a pop head. So no losses here for me. He is under scrutiny for revealing that Britney Spears wasn't a virgin, even though she was telling the media that she was. She was probably telling the media to get them to stop hypersexualizing her, but whatever. A big cool thing that has come out of it is a lot of celebrities showing support. Like I'm saying, like it has a lot of buzz, and that has resulted in Britney's current boyfriend to speak out and call her father a dick on Instagram stories. And that's a huge deal. It sounds really dumb, but it's a huge, huge deal because Britney has not been able to sort of comment on the conservatorship at all. Like, all of her stuff is kind of very controlled. Her boyfriend had never commented on anything, so this is a huge deal. The buzz and the momentum is enough for them to have like a stronger case against Jamie Spears. And again, that's what I'm saying that is annoying about, oh, now everyone with a documentary cares about it. And that buzz might be enough to like help Britney get out of this, which is really great, but it's like, where have y'all been? Hello? But anyway, I really hope it results in something. I have seen a lot of celebrity responses. We had Sarah Jessica Parker tweet about the documentary. Casey Musgraves came out on Instagram talking about, never has one person been so used and abandoned by every facet around her. Khloe Kardashian, which, okay. I'm praying for Queen Britney. So sad. Miley at her Super Bowl pre-show thing said, we love Britney. Andy Cohen, again, someone that's questionable, but whatever. Casey Musgrave said, y'all, it's plaguing me that nobody knows if Britney is truly okay. Really hoping that if she isn't, she can formally vocalize it in some way that she knows all of us on the outside really give a shit about her well-being. I saw Courtney Love tweet, we are sorry, Britney. Billy Eichner said, lots of virtuous folks on here pretending they didn't read Perez Hilton or Us Weekly's abusive coverage of Britney religiously in 2005. We are all to blame. And that is so true. It's easy to forget how much the world has changed, how we value mental health so much more now, how social media has connected us closer to celebrities, eliminating as much need for the tabloids, a lot more awareness about just misogyny in the industry, and recognizing it when we see it, like in the Justin Timberlake case, or how boy bands were never held to the same standard that Britney was at the same time. Last thing I'll talk about is, so Chris Crocker made a post that was very, very interesting. Chris Crocker was the person who did the Leave Britney Alone video. It's one of the first viral videos of all time. They said, me saying leave Britney alone was never really the issue. Michael Moore said it and no one batted an eyelash. Maybe people reaching out to tell me, Chris, you were right, would feel good. There's been a lot of support towards Chris Crocker as well for like, oh, Chris Crocker was right all along, which I'm like, we knew that. Why are people tweeting that now? But whatever, okay. We all know now Chris Crocker was right. So they're sort of commenting on how they were bullied and they were suffering from a lot of transphobia, cyberbullying. If I knew that people could unpack that the reason no one took me serious was because I was a gender-bending teenager and the reaction to me was transphobic. When I said it, I had to fear for my life. Death threats were sent to my grandmother's house. I was already living in the South as a gender-bending teenager with no money or ways of feeling protected. The hate was also directed towards me by other LGBT people. Not just verbal, but physical attacks were made towards me at gay bars. This was during a pre-Drag Race time, before everyone and their mom was saying yes, queen. It was a time of only embracing the heteronormative people in the media. I hope not only Britney gets the freedom she deserves, but that femme queer people are not tortured in the media when showcasing humanity. This is very interesting and I think sums up a lot of my thoughts and a lot of people's thoughts on the Free Britney movement. It is about Britney and I hope this results in her freedom. But there was a lot about that time and how she was treated that goes even beyond Britney and just shows a lot of flaws in our society. It was basically anti-femininity. That's what it was. It's, as usual, femininity is seen as like this evil thing that needs to be squashed and torn down constantly. and not taken seriously, not treated as human. I hope this buzz can lead to real change, but I hope it can also help us reflect on how we treat celebrities, how we treat women, how we treat queer people, how we treat anyone that's different or feminine, specifically femme in any way. We have all probably participated in it in some ways in the past. Now even there is still a lot of now we have cancel culture and all these things. There's still a lot of racism and bullying that goes on for people just for who they are. Just pay attention to this cycle of building up, tearing down women, then making them have this comeback. Happens all the time to almost every woman in Hollywood and every person that's different or feminine in Hollywood. I hope we can all learn from this. We can all allow feminine people to be human, to be vulnerable, and to be flawed. That we can help end conservatorships or amend them in a way that protects the conservatee a lot more. I always end sort of half-heartedly optimistic, but I'm optimistic that at least for Britney there is enough buzz going around to help her get into a better situation. I'm glad the Free Britney movement has become mainstream. It has reached that mainstream threshold that I talked about in my trend graph. I feel like hopefully it'll lead to change. So that's all I have for my review on Framing Britney Spears on Hulu. Let me know what you thought of the documentary or of the Free Britney movement in general. I would love to see your comments. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. You can follow me at Miscellaneous on Twitter and Instagram to get updates about my new videos, or turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye!